Most people think writing a thriller is about big twists and shocking endings, but the real tension often lives behind the scenes. Rejection, patience, pressure, and the long road between having a story in your head and seeing it on the bookstore shelves. Welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we explore how mindset, resilience, and real life experiences shape success and well being. I'm your host Yusuf, and today I'm joined by Michael Wendroff, a debut thriller writer whose first novel is already in his third printing, with foreign translation rights sold internationally. We are talking about Killing It, the thriller writer's journey, and what it is actually like to build a creative career under pressure, expectation, and long term uncertainty. What you'll hear today applies whether you are a writer, a creator, or anyone chasing a meaningful goal. With that, I welcome my guest Michael to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Perfect. Michael, I am curious. When did writing for you stop feeling like something you loved and started feeling like, you were truly committed to, even when the outcome was not guaranteed?
Well, I've always wanted to write a novel. I've spent the last number of years in a marketing career, but in my entire life, I've had experiences that have led up to it, but all along I've wanted to write. And actually, the impetus for writing this novel was something that my mother said to me the second I was born, or so I'm
Mhm.
told. I was put on her chest. She looked deeply in my eyes and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again." And it was that again that always intrigued me. And I wanted to do something with it. And that something eventually became part of the major twist ending in my novel, What Goes Around.
Mm. Okay. There's this idea that being connected to the publishing world or growing up around that publishing world makes success almost automatic. How that assumption lands for you?
No, it's far from automatic. There are millions of books that are out there on Amazon and millions more that never make it out into the marketplace. So it's
Mhm.
a very tough industry. Now, you're right. Might have had a leg up from my background. For example, my mother had been a editor back in some major New York City publishing houses back in the day. And, it's funny, I distinctly remember her sitting on a couch on a weekend, her legs, crossed, her manuscript pages strewn about her, a red pen in hand, marking up, authors', manuscripts with her editorial comments. Well, you think that that would have prepared me for when I got my editor's comments. But no, I think those comments in the margin of the Word document, they probably felt as as tough as the red pen. But, I guess I wasn't surprised because, I'd seen that from my mother. And, she also had an influence on me in writing and publishing in that she remarried, and she married a literary agent. And for your listeners who are not aware, a literary agent is really the key person in the publishing industry today because, traditional publishers at least will not even read your manuscript unless it comes through a literary agent. They're the real screeners of the quality out there. And in fact, sometimes I'd say it's harder to actually get a literary agent to take you on as an author than it is to, once you have an agent, for them to actually publish the book. So that's how important
Mhm.
agents are. And so I grew up around an agent, and he really had a lot of really terrific thriller writers and mystery writers. That's really how I got into that category and writing my thriller because, all those books were free to me. So I read a lot and I kind of got a feeling for what works and what doesn't work in the category. And, he did have some interesting writers. In fact, one was Robert Ludlum, and he was a best-selling author, and a lot of people know him from the Bourne Identity movies with Matt Damon. But there was, one time where we actually went and visited him at his, winter home, which was in the Caribbean, St. Thomas. And I remember, getting up early one morning, tiptoeing into the living room, and there Bob was sitting on a couch with a yellow legal pad in hand and a pencil in hand, and that's how he wrote his 450-page novels, by hand. I mean, I admire his plotting and his prose, but thankfully, when it came time for me to write my novel, I had a PC. But, I wanted to write. It took me a while to get into it. I actually studied, business in school, got my, MBA, from New York University, from NYU, and it was actually, in fact, at that point where I married what had been my love of books and publishing with a newfound love of marketing. That's what I was studying in business school. And in fact, the thesis I wrote for my MBA was titled um, Marketing in the Publishing Industry. And for that, I had to interview a lot of publishing execs. Um, there was a trade journal for the publishing industry here called Publishers Weekly, and they actually got wind that I was interviewing these execs, and they talked to me, and they actually ended up excerpting my MBA thesis in 3 issues of the magazine, and they paid me for that. So, I got paid for my thesis, and it was the first time I got paid for my writing, and I liked that. And the other thing I liked about that experience is one time I was waiting outside the editor-in-chief at a publishing firm, Simon& and Schuster's office, and I'm waiting, and it's, past the time for me to talk to him, and then suddenly the door opens, and he says, "I got someone for you to meet," and it's Truman Capote. Talk about thriller writers in cold blood, and he looked just like you'd think, in the white suit and the pink shirt and the Panama hat. So it was quite an experience. But so yes, I had all of those um, publishing surrounding me, but, went into business, went into marketing, worked for big companies, then went in and, did, my own consulting gig on international on global strategic marketing. In fact, one of my larger clients has been, Godridge, which I think is now around a $4 billion company, and they were looking at bringing some products here into the US, so I've been helping them with that. But then the pandemic hit, and that's what finally got me to fulfill my lifetime quest, which of writing, because at that point here in the US, you couldn't do anything. In my town, you couldn't even go to the beach, let alone play tennis. So I was out of excuses, and I gave it a shot, and I got lucky. It's been quite an experience, but got that agent and got that publisher, and book's done really well, and based on the reviews for what goes around and the, sales, my publisher has given me a contract for book 2, so couldn't be more thrilled.
Perfect.
Yeah,
A very congratulations for your second contract. And yeah, I like your story because, access doesn't replace the inner work or the grind that you have to do, that you had to do. It just changes the kind of pressure you carry or changes the kind of work that you have to do.
absolutely, absolutely, and there's a lot of work after your, book gets accepted because, I learned that, there's a whole lot of different editors in the at least the traditional publishing industry. So what I found out was that the editor that bought my book, the acquisitions editor, is more of a big picture strategic editor. I'd say that editor's involved in things like maybe you should have a prologue, or maybe you should move this bit of action more towards the middle of the book instead of the end,
Mm.
say. Bigger picture stuff. And then there's a line editor, and that editor does just like what it sounds, looks at every single line in your book, make sure it's as good as can be. And, each of these rounds, I'm revising my book, going through the whole thing. And then there's a copy editor. And what a copy editor does is make sure that, for example, you didn't say she has green eyes in chapter 2 and brown eyes in chapter 9. If you're dealing with guns, making sure your facts are right there. You have timelines, making sure the chronology is making sense. That kind of stuff. And then there's a proofreader that, looks for any little errors. I'm actually shocked when I pick up other best-selling books and I still find errors in them. But I guess, if you're dealing with 90,000 words, even the proofreader may not capture everything. So I went through, my book again with proofreader comments, and I thought I was finally done. And my publisher comes to me and said, "Michael, we've set the hardcover typeface on your book. You need to go read through it all over again to make sure nothing fell out in that process." Man, I can't tell you how many times I read my book. It's a good thing I like it. So it's a lot of work. It never ends. You gotta keep at it. That's for sure.
You've studied publishing from both a business and a creative lens. What actually determines underneath a debut author survives beyond the first book?
Um, well, I tell you, I've learned a whole lot in this whole process. So it's, I'm writing my second book. I was doing that this morning. I'm about 275 pages in, and I think it's going a lot more efficiently and a lot smoother. And certainly now in terms of research, these days with Chat GPT, instead of me having to Google 30 articles about, a secret group as I wrote about and what goes around. I get the info more efficiently through ChatGPT. You have to be careful and double check. But having gone through all this with the editors, I understand kind of what they're looking for and what the process is. So it's going a lot smoother. Um, I still, this second book actually includes 2 key characters from my first book, from What Goes Around. And Publishers tend to like authors that, um, provide a series or a consistency, and, for marketing myself, I kinda consider, um, authors to be like brands in that you want your audience, your readers to know what they're gonna get from you. So if they enjoyed the experience reading the first book, they'll get the same thing out of the second book. So, I'll always write thrillers because that's, on brand, and I'll always write in my same style, which is, very short chapters. I do that because, I think attention spans these days are less than they used to be, and there's a lot of competition for entertainment, whether it's videos, games, movies, YouTube, everything, TikTok, a lot of competition. So I write short chapters, and what I do with each short chapter is I try to end each one as a cliffhanger, and that could be physical or psychological or emotional. And then I start the next chapter with a very intriguing first line. So, that's my writing style that keeps things moving, keeps the pages turning, makes the reader not want to put it down, as the reviewers have said. So that stays with me from book to book for sure. And just the whole writing experience in terms of what my methodology is will be the same book to book. And, there's 2 kinds of writers out there. There are writers that are called pantsers, and they literally sit at their PCs and, write by the seat of their pants. They don't know where the story's going. I couldn't do that. That's not me at all. I'm more of what they call a plotter. So a plotter, um, I basically, after ideating, coming up with the basic storyline, I have to outline in detail, what's going to happen throughout. So I know, certainly know the big twist ending. I know the twists along the way. I know the character arcs. I know, the red herrings I'm going to put in there. I basically know the whole storyline before I write word one. And, it's not like the book can't evolve. I mean, it does. I mean, sometimes I'll get random thoughts while I'm writing and think, "Oh," or mostly in the shower though, and think, "Oh, that's a good idea. I should incorporate that one." But also, I remember there was once when my plot called for my character to be killed off. And, I'd really grown to like this character. We had a lot of good conversations. Um, am I crazy? Maybe a little, but the characters do talk to authors. And, uh, I just, I couldn't kill him off. So I had to change the
Mm.
plot, which I did so that he wouldn't be killed off. But, there was a similar situation. Again, I liked this character a lot, had a plot called for him to be killed off. And this time I did. I killed him off. And I tell you, the whole week after that, my wife's yelling at me, "Why are you so depressed? This character's not real." But to authors, they are real. I'm keeping that same writing process book to book, plotting it
Mhm.
and then, doing the research. I mentioned that's a little bit easier with ChatGPT or other AI for research. But what I found is the best type of research you can actually do is the research where you talk to the type of people that are the characters in your book. So, I was lucky where I live. I was able to talk to FBI agents. I was able to talk to chiefs of police. I was able to talk to, which was important for my book, a female detective. And she was great. She gave me these stories and anecdotes and, insights. And a lot of that made it into what goes around. And uh, so that's key. Talk to the type of people and get the real feel for them from actually talking to them. I don't think I spoke to any serial killers. Hmm.
Please. Michael, for listeners who want to explore your work or follow your journey, where is the best place to find you?
A couple of things. One is, my books are in bookstores, but they're also online. So you can, go to an Amazon or a BarnesandNoble.com, whatever. And my book is now available. The hardcover came out, and now the trade paperback just a few weeks ago came out. And the
Mhm.
paperback actually was published with a discussion guide for book clubs because my book, because it's so topical and dealing with such interesting things, it became very popular among book clubs. So the paperback has the book club insert in it, discussion guide. It's also available in an ebook form. My
Mhm.
agent also sold rights to an audiobook. So you can get it in all different forms. And it was funny. I just did a book club presentation last week, and I saw every one of those forms was there. Everyone had a different form of what goes around. So you can find it there, and you can also look me up on my website, michaelwendroff.com. And if you want to ask me questions, there's an email form on my website, and I answer every question I get from someone. I love talking to readers or even potential authors if you want some more tips.
Perfect. And to all the people who are listening, all these links are in the show notes. So just go and check those out.
Right.
Michael, is there any last message that you want us to leave with?
Well, my message I think would be, I personally have had a lot of help in my life, not just in publishing my book, but throughout. I've been lucky. And what I would say to that is remember what goes around comes around.
Um,
And thank you for listening.
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending this time with us on a healthy mind, healthy life.
Sure thing. This has been fun.
And to everyone listening, if today's conversation resonated, take a moment to reflect on where patience and commitment are being asked of you right now. Success is not just about breaking in, it's about building the emotional resilience to stay in. Until next time, take care of your mind, trust your process, and keep moving forward.